Blog Talk Radio.
Hello, everyone. This is Lori Smith on Blog Talk Radio. I am glad to be here. It is Monday night, 9:30 p.m. Calgary, Alberta time, March 22nd, and this is just great. It's Child Abuse Prevention and Human Rights Abuse Prevention is up to us. We'll be on 30 minutes. It's a live internet streaming radio broadcast from blogtalkradio.com, and we're on for 30 minutes, and I'll be continuing on with the Survivor to Thriver workbook. We've been working on that for weeks now, and it's just because it's such a huge workbook. It's 115 pages long, and we're just on page 72. So we have a ways to go. And I wasn't even sure if I was going to cover the whole thing, but it's just so interesting, especially for adult survivors. And that's where I found this workbook. It's found on the Adult Survivors of Child Abuse, a Morris Center program website. You can find that at www.ascasupport.org. And you can go there and pull up this Survivor to Thriver workbook yourself. It's available for everyone. It's free. It's a free download. And they do just, they run through like the first 34 pages all about safety first and just making sure that we're in the right place to do this workbook. If you're a survivor of child abuse of any kind, it's very important to know at what point your healing is, how far along you are in your healing. And it's just so important that we all, know and recognize the signs, the triggers that can cause us to kind of regress in our healing, in our journey. And so we want to make sure we're in a good place when we're doing this workbook. And that first 34 pages, they actually go into some real great detail on whether or not a person should continue on with the book. You can kind of tell yourself how you're feeling by the questions that they ask. So it's so important for everyone to, if you're going to listen to this show tonight, to make sure, first of all, that you're in the frame of mind that you can actually handle, the topic, and that, it won't cause you to kind of regress in your healing, because we want to go forward at a very slow and easy and even pace. And I just think that's so important. They stress that on this website and in this workbook. It's so important. So yeah, this is not a professional show. It's not meant to replace professional help. You know what I mean? It's just, I'm just a person who sits on Blog Talk Radio. I care about people. I'm a survivor of child abuse, and I know what it's like. I know how hard it is to walk this walk and to on this road to healing. You know what I mean? So I know there's so many of us out there, and that's why I decided to do this show and just to be another voice out there, just to say you're not alone, first of all, and that there's with hope, we can just keep holding on to that hope, that one day we'll walk free, from the pain and from the terrible, psychological trauma that abuse does to us, right? So, that's the whole purpose of the show. And, if you're a young person, I just ask that you have someone listen to the show with you if you're under the age of 18, because I fight for child rights. I'm a child rights advocate, and also, I stand up for human rights as well. But child rights are especially important to me. And so your safety is number one. And so children, especially young children, and anyone under the age of 18, really, you'd be doing me a favor and yourself to have someone listen to the show with you, to make sure it's okay for you to listen to it, because, your safety comes first. And so, you want to make sure that you have approval from someone to listen to the show. And I know a lot of times, in our families, we don't have someone that we can go to, that's there for us to help us with this sort of thing. So if you have like a teacher at school that you really trust, or a counselor, you give them the link to this show, and you could say, hey, could you listen to this for a few shows, and make sure that it's something that I can listen to. And if you're interested in listening, because it's so important. I just really care about children's safety, and that's really what this show is really all about, children, really. But it is about adult survivor issues as well. And the subject of abuse can be very it's sensitive, and it can be scary, especially for people who haven't heard a lot about it. And so that if you have someone listen with you, you'd have someone there to help you find some answers to questions that you might have. So that's very important, that we're all in a good place when we're listening to this. And we'll continue on. We're on step 3. And this is the Survivor to Thriver workbook at www.ascasupport.org. And we've gone through quite a lot of the workbook, over half now. And step 3 is the page 72. It's the section that says, I have made a commitment to recovery from my childhood abuse. And that's what they call this actual step 3. And they go on to talk about it, and then they go to a self-help area where they give suggestions for self-help, and then it goes on to professional help. So we'll read through that, and we might even be able to do step 4, just depending on how much time we have. I might, I'm going to be reading right from the page, and you can go and pull this workbook up yourself and see if you want to read right along with me. I'm actually reading from the book, and then I'll throw in my own stuff too, because, I like to, it gives people an idea of kind of firsthand what someone who's experienced abuse might go through, and what, families go through firsthand with this kind of stuff. And, if you're a survivor, then you would know and probably be able to relate to a lot of what I'm saying. And so we'll just go from there. We'll see how it goes for tonight. And so I'm glad you could be here and join me. This is awesome. I'll start reading right now. All survivors who have recovered from child abuse can point to a moment in time when the desire to change and the hope of a better life overcame the wall of denial and resistance. After acknowledging that you were abused and that the effects of the abuse may be undermining your life as an adult, you next need to do something about it. This is a critical step for many survivors because moving from thinking about the abuse to actually doing something about it, for example, committing to a recovery program, is a large leap indeed. It is a point at which many survivors flounder. And it says, because this step is more like a leap, it may mean more to you than many of the other steps once you finally achieve it. Taking this giant step signifies that you are no longer a passive victim of the past, and you are now truly a survivor in the sense that you are motivated to overcome the effects of your abuse and are initiating change in the present in the hope of creating a better future for yourself, becoming a thriver, and you are building on your acknowledgement of the abuse and recognizing that while you have been deeply hurt by it, you have not been defeated or destroyed. And then they go on to say, what does it mean to make a commitment to recovery? Basically, it means acting, reaching out for help, for joining a support group like ASCA, and if possible, entering therapy with an experienced professional who will work with you from now until you have reached step 21. We're just on step 3 here. There's 21 steps. It says if you are still not ready to make this commitment, you can bridge steps 1 and 2 in a way that may help you eventually to join ASCA or start therapy. Consider disclosing your struggle to a spouse, trusted friend, or clergy member. Disclosing your abuse to someone else can be extremely powerful because it shatters the silence and secrecy of the past and may well shatter your expectation of a negative response. But be sure to choose very carefully the person whom you tell. You want this action to help you and encourage you to move forward, not to set you back. And that's just so true, right? I know at the point where, about 5 months ago, I decided to go public with my story, and I wrote a blog. I started it out as a blog. It's called Not So Fond Memories Growing Up in an Abusive Home. And when I decided to go public, I had to think about it, and I thought, okay, I've dealt with the silence. I've dealt with this my whole life, and am I going to be okay with going public? It had to be the right time, and it just had to be, I had to be strong enough to be able to handle any kind of backlash that might come from it, and also, negative comments and things. And I thought, what, I've suffered long enough on my own. I've suffered long enough with this, and I want people to know, that what child abuse victims and survivors go through and have gone through, because I fight for child rights, and I'm an advocate, and I believe that child abuse needs to stop now. You know what I mean? So I'm out there trying to get the word out to people, and I thought, man, that's the whole issue that's surrounding child abuse is silence, because it's so painful to talk about, it's so painful to think about, and if you've experienced it, it's so painful to deal with, and so talking about it is often very hard. But once I started talking, to people in groups like support groups, I belonged to, at one time probably 4 support groups. Now I'm down to 2, but they were all great because I met a lot of people just in the last 5 months who have gone through so much of the same type of things that I've gone through. Even some are a little different than mine, but it didn't matter. We were all in the same boat trying to heal from a past that was put on us by someone else, and carrying around these burdens with us for so long, and everybody just wanted everyone to heal and to be well and to be able to move on with their lives. So that's why I really think a group support is really good for us. Also, finding a good friend, a really good friend who is not going to use your information to hurt you, someone you can trust, and they've proven themselves trustworthy, right? a real genuine person who cares and really wants the best for you. And it's hard to find people like that, but I find that, as I started reaching out, especially about 5 months ago, as I reached out and my hand reached out, all these hands came back to me, and I couldn't believe it. I'm telling you, it still really just astounds me how many people reached out to me just when I started reaching out to them, and it's amazing. And these people are all my good friends, and I just love them all. And they listen to my shows, and I thank you all. I've got people in the UK, people in Australia, people in the United States, all over the United States, people in Canada, who are here for me to support me and back me up. And, if I'm having a hard time, I know I could talk to any one of them and they would be there for me. And it's so important to have that support. As growing up as children, if you were abused as a child, you probably didn't have a lot of support, maybe had a good friend here and there. I mean, I did. I had a few good friends. But as far as family support and stuff, that was just out of the question. There was no support whatsoever. There still isn't really much support as far as being able to heal from this whole mess, because our family is very dysfunctional and we don't come together as far as the abuse goes. You know what I mean? We all feel differently about it, and some don't want to discuss it, some just want to leave it alone and just move on with their lives. And then me, I'm out there going, no, I want everybody to know, because I want to break the silence. And I think, it freed me. It really freed me to do that, and it was a very healing thing for me. But I think everyone has to make that decision when they're ready. And just like this ASCA, Adult Survivors of Child Abuse More Center program, the first 34 pages go through a lot of that, safety first, and just making sure that, everything has to be in the proper time. You have to be far enough along in your healing, and it has to feel right to you to be able to do something like that. So you don't want to do anything that's going to make you uncomfortable or cause you to go further back or regress in your healing. So I went public, and I was perfectly okay with it, and I still am. I'm so glad that I did, but it's a decision everybody has to make on their own. And just acknowledging the abuse. About 3 years ago, I was sitting on the couch thinking that I might self-harm, thinking that I could end my life, and, then I thought, why am I doing what? It just kind of hit me all of a sudden. I thought, why am I doing this? If I do this, then I let my parents win. That I let them win this fight, and I'm not letting them win this fight. I want to stay. I do want to live, and I do want to have a good life. All of a sudden, everything changed from that point. So that would be the point where, they said you will usually have a moment where you actually notice that you acknowledge the fact that you want to change, and you want to not be a victim anymore. You want to be a survivor and a thriver, right? And that's the point where, you notice all of a sudden, you want to get better and overcome the effects of the abuse in your life, and actually learn how to move past it, and learn how to, while we know it hurt us, but it doesn't have to defeat or destroy us. And so I really like this article, and because that's how I felt, 3 years ago. I just thought, wow, I'm not going to do this. I'm not going to hurt myself. I'm not going to self-harm. I'm not going to try to end my life, because, I'm winning this fight. I'm going to go on and have the life that I should have had from the very beginning, which is a life full of love and compassion and mercy, goodness and kindness and good people in my life, and, a successful life, as far as successful goes in my mind, which is just enjoying what I do every day and doing the best I can, right? And so, that was a huge step for me, and I know it's a huge step for all of us who have been abused, and it's such a turning point. That was the turning point, 3 years ago. But it took me that long just to kind of work through it, and finally decide to go public with my story. So that would be, close to three years. So it is quite interesting how long it takes to get through that stuff. So I'll continue reading here. Throughout this manual, we have stressed both professional therapy and self-help as important tools for your recovery. Because you are attending ASCA and perhaps other self-help meetings, you are obviously aware of the benefits of self-help, but it doesn't hurt to summarize them briefly. Self-help support groups often offer understanding, support, information, and acceptance for participants in recovery, and most cost nothing to join and meet at various times and locations. Most accept anyone who has an interest in the topic of the meeting or who expresses a desire or willingness to change, and self-help groups can provide resources and information for participants needing additional help. By use of a sponsor system, or as like in ASCA, a phone list, self-help support groups offer support during difficult times and welcome relief from the isolation, stigmatization, and shame that most survivors face, right? Perhaps most importantly, self-help groups offer a sense of belonging and family that probably was not available to you as you were growing up. If your family is still in denial about the abuse or unwilling to change defensive attitudes, then self-help groups can become a sort of surrogate family for you. As we have said before, it is very difficult to do this work alone, and ASCA and other self-help groups can help provide you with the community and support you need to continue working through your recovery. And some survivors have gone through the motions of making a commitment to recovery without necessarily putting their hearts into it, and you too may have attended self-help and other support groups or started therapy without really intending to face the reality of your childhood abuse or the feelings associated with it. During the initial stages of recovery, you may discover that you are avoiding some crucial aspect of yourself or your problem, and this will likely only hinder your progress. Don't wait for someone else to point it out. Start acting in your own best interest to help your identified helpers help you. So, yeah, we should, if we really want to heal and we really want to move forward, then we have to be honest with ourselves, and we have to be honest with these people who are actually there for us to support us if we have them in our lives. And, we have to be willing to go through and move at our own pace and go through it at our own pace, but we have to be willing to actually take the steps necessary to do it. And it is hard. It's so very hard. And so I know, and if you're out there and you're suffering with this, and, my heart's just with you, and I just, I'll just keep you in my prayers, and I know how hard it is, and you have to keep going. You just have to keep moving forward very slowly at your own pace, taking it, one step at a time, and those will be your steps, and allowing yourself the time to heal and the time to do this properly, right? Self-help says, here's some sort of recommendations from them for self-help. Number 1, write in your journal about the circumstances or insights that caused you to make a commitment to recovery at this time. So we're supposed to write down circumstances or insights or thoughts that might have caused us to make a commitment to recovery, right? Number 2, who, if anyone, has inspired you to get help? So, maybe another survivor, or maybe just a friend who cares about us and says, man, you should really work through this, and I want to stand by you. And, so it's good to recognize who that person is or who those people are, right? Describe the part of you that is motivated to get help and to make changes. So I guess we're supposed to take a look at what part of us is motivated to get help and make changes. That's kind of interesting. Number 4, how do the voices of your internal naysayers, those parts of you opposed to making such a commitment, justify not going forward with recovery? What are the reasons, and how do you counter them? So maybe that's just our inner voices saying, no, I'm not ready, or whatever. If they're opposed to it, then we have to look for the reasons, and how would we actually counter those reasons, right? How would we come up with a way of looking at it that would help us to feel better about moving on with the commitment to recovery, right? And number 5, write an affirmation in your journal about your commitment to recover from child abuse. It can be a poem, a letter to yourself, a statement of your goals, or an unsent letter to your partners or parents or abusers. This can become a personal manifesto to which you can return for strength, inspiration, and encouragement during the most difficult times of recovery. I've heard of that, and lots of people do that. And I've read so many survivors' poems and beautiful poetry, and poetry that just makes my heart break, And but the thing is, it's necessary. It's necessary to read it too. I like to read other people's stories. I like to read other people's poems, see their artwork. These are survivors. This is their life on paper. This is their life, their pain, their tears, their blood, their bruises. Every single thing that happened to them is on this. It's either on paper or it's on art. It's in their art. It's showing up somewhere in their writing or whatever. It's so important to take a look at that and acknowledge it. And because this is the whole issue. They're laying their heart out for everybody to see. And it's amazing what people have been through and actually been able to walk away from and are still alive. And that's what keeps me kind of going, because I know there's so many people out there who have survived so much worse than I have. And I sit there and I think, if they can do it, I can do it. It does bolster me up to see these people out here, these survivors who are just going for it. Because I'm like, hey, they're doing it, I can do it. And it is so encouraging. And so that's what I hope I can be to someone else, is just an encouraging voice just to say, look, you can do it. We can hang in there, It might take a little while, and it's going to hurt, but it's so worth it, because better days are coming, and better feelings are coming, and we do deserve it. We do count. We do matter, and we deserve to have that good life. We deserve to have the opportunity to have a good life. Every single one of us does. It's our human right on this planet, and so we have to make it happen, right? It won't just fall into our laps, and it's not just going to happen overnight. We have to realize that it's a journey, it's a struggle, and the more people that we have on our side on this journey, the better off we are. And so I highly recommend just hooking up with some people who've been there and experienced it, and are going to be very gentle with you. You know what I mean? Because we do need gentleness in our lives. If you've experienced child abuse, you know that child abuse is not very gentle. And so if you grew up, with no love and no gentleness in your life, that's what you need, and that's what I found. People have been so gentle with me, and I really appreciate it, because I never got any of that. So it does help, and it makes a huge difference in my life. So professional help, they go on to say, let's see. Number 6, sorry, we're going to go back to the self-help. If you have not already done so, make a commitment to attend ASCA meetings or participate in the ASCA online meeting at www.ascasupport.org and any other self-help meetings you feel you may need. Use some of your spare time, they said, spare time in ASCA meetings to talk about your commitment to your recovery process. You might address what strengthens your commitment, as well as what periodically erodes your commitment to recovery. So we can, they do have an online support group as well on their website that you can hook up to. I haven't done it yet because I was looking for an actual ASCA meeting in my city, and they don't have them up here in Calgary, but they do have the online support. And so I'm seriously thinking about trying, see if I can get involved and become a member there. Because it's so important to get that support. I still have some issues I'm working through, and I'd like to have some people around me to do it. And for now I'm keeping it private, and it's to do with childhood sexual abuse, and I have not faced it. So not really. I know it happened. I've faced it enough just to admit that it happened, but there's some real foggy stuff around it that I kind of blocked out, and so I need some help with that, you know what I mean? So, we all have areas that we need to work on, and that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that, and we can do it. We can do it, and we just have to make that commitment to do it and say, yes, I'm going to do it. And then there's the recommendations for professional help. It says, if you have not already done so, and provided that this is an option for you, make a commitment to find a competent and caring therapist, someone who will support you as you go through the ups and downs of recovery. Refer to the section on choosing a therapist in Chapter 1 if you need help in going about this task. And it says, once you are in therapy, share with your therapist your thoughts on what you want to accomplish and what you have accomplished to date. Remember that your therapist will likely be intuitive, but not a mind reader. So if you share your recollections of the abuse as soon as you feel comfortable, you and your therapist can devise a plan for healing that both acknowledges your past work and focuses on your present needs. So that's so awesome. That is so great. If I could afford it, I'd go to a therapist, but I don't have any of that kind of extra money right now. So I'm just sticking with the support groups, and hopefully they're free. So, but that's okay, because who knows what will happen in the future, and I just keep going forward, right? And that's all we can do, is just one day at a time, moving at whatever pace we can manage and whatever's manageable for us, and just be happy about the good days, and celebrate those good days, and really make note of the good days and what was so good about them, right? And things like that. There's so many things we can do. And step 4 is the next step, and it's called I shall re-experience each set of memories of the abuse as they surface in my mind. And we went over, step 2 was actually kind of a little bit like that, just kind of acknowledging the memories and stuff. And step 4 also goes into that as well. And I guess we can start that. That's a long one, so maybe we should go ahead and start it anyway. This step represents the major task of the first stage of recovery and may require the most time to accomplish. Often survivors of extreme and prolonged abuse will need to return to this step again and again as new recollections of the same or additional episodes of abuse surface. And this step essentially involves going through the memories of your abuse and expressing them at ASCA meetings to trusted friends, supporters, or your therapist in as much detail as you can remember and to the extent appropriate to your listeners. If at all possible, we encourage you to find a therapist before beginning work on this step. If this is not possible, this is the time to strengthen your support network and continue your participation in ASCA meetings. Yeah, because they go on to explain here, re-experiencing the abuse comprises many things. First, you will need to allow yourself to re-experience the various feelings, express them as they arise, and eventually be able to label them so they do not confuse and overwhelm you. Second, you need to try to describe every sensory impressions connected to the abuse, which is visual images, sounds, smells, tastes, and tactile sensations. And third, you will need to recall your thoughts about the abuse both during and after each episode. And so, they go on to quite some detail, and we got about 4 minutes left, so I don't think we're going to cover that. We're going to actually, we'll start working on step 4 again on Wednesday night, same time, 9:30. This is pretty heavy duty. It's what I did to write my story. It's I basically, went through all of those abusive memories, and any ones that were very cognitive, I actually left out because they were pretty vague. But anything that was so, I could just recall like that. I was actually talking about that on my Blog Talk show this morning. It is in the book, and to do that you have to experience it again. But I know, because I experience that stuff all the time. Things will remind me. You know what I mean? I have. During the day, I could be at work, and all of a sudden I can still feel the abuse that I took from my mom and even from my dad, and I can remember what I was feeling and what happened and just the whole thing surrounding it. So I kind of experience it on a daily basis, and I think there's maybe a little bit of a sign of PTSD, but I'm not sure. But I've never been diagnosed, but I don't want to forget about it, because I want to help people to, if I just forget about it and move on, then I think, to me, that's like saying, oh, well, I'm done, so now, I'll just move on. And for me, I kind of keep it there on purpose, I think. It might be a bit of, something like that, just to keep it there so that I can remember, you know what I mean? So that I can be that voice for the abused child out there who's going through this stuff, you know what I mean? And that's so important to me. We need to stand up for these children out there. We have about 3 minutes left. I'm the Canada Regional Director for Dreamcatchers for Abused Children, and I'm so happy to stand with them and, just to be able to raise awareness, educate, and prevent child abuse, and just be another voice out there saying, look, we need to stop child abuse. It has to happen, and we're going to have to work within our communities. Society at large is going to have to take a bigger part of this. All of us are going to have to stand up and say, look, it's got to stop, because it's being, pushed under the carpet. The only time we hear about abuse is when we see, articles in the newspaper or on the TV about a child being killed or murdered at the hands of a parent or caregiver, or both parents, or sexual predators. And, we don't, or either that or they're in the hospital with life-threatening injuries due to the abuse. So that's just the whole issue. We do need to stand up for these kids out here who are being abused. We need to all take a role in this, whether we've been abused or not. It does matter. They do count, and they're counting on us to make this change. They're counting on us to make this happen, as obviously their parents and caregivers cannot do it. So it's going to be up to us. We're going to have to take that stand, and no matter what way we can, however it is, or everyone has limitations on their resources and on their time, but as long as everyone gets involved and does something, it's really going to make a big difference. So you can check out all this great information on the website Dreamcatchers for Abused Children. That's www.dreamcatchersforabusedchildren.org or .com. Either one will get you there. I like .org better. It comes up a little bit better. And they are everywhere. They're on MySpace, LinkedIn, they're on Twitter, Facebook. You can get great information, all kinds of volunteers in different states and around the world who can help you find some information if you need it. But that website is awesome. There's all kinds of information about what is child abuse? What are the signs and symptoms of child abuse? How do I report child abuse? That's a big one. We all need to know how to report child abuse, because we could mess up a case for a child if we don't report it properly. And so there's very distinct ways, it's very specific ways of how to to collect the information. If a child comes to you and discloses that they've been abused, you have to do it properly, or you can mess it up for the kid. They'll end up back in the home, and they could die. You know, we could save a child's life by knowing what the signs and symptoms are and knowing how to report it. So I highly recommend that website. And Tuesday night, that's tomorrow night, 6:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, we have Dreamcatchers Talk Radio here at Blog Talk Radio. That's www.blogtalkradio.com/Dreamcatchers. And President and best-selling author Donna Shear is going to be hosting. I'm going to be co-hosting. And then we're on for, I think, half an hour. We might be on for an hour. I'm not sure. But anyway, half an hour for sure tomorrow night, 6:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I hope you will join us. And there's the National Abuse Awareness Month going on down in the States next month, all the whole month of April. Dreamcatchers for Abused Children is stepping up to the plate. They're joining in. All kinds of great things that you can do in your own community to get involved to stop child abuse. Get a hold of us if you need some more information. Get a hold of me. Thanks so much for tuning in, everybody. My heart is with you. We'll be back on Wednesday night for Step 4, and we'll really go through it. It's going to be really good, and we'll just make sure that we're in the right place if we're going to listen to it. And thank you so much, and take care of yourselves, everybody. I'll be back on tomorrow morning, 5:30, One Child Abuse Survivor to Another, and take care. Bye-bye.